Julia Roberts. For decades, she has been known as America's sweetheart, a woman whose laughter seemed effortless, whose charm felt natural, and whose presence lit up movie screens across the globe. But behind that famous smile was a life far more complicated than many people realized. How did the young woman who became one of the most beloved actresses in history endure so many painful chapters away from the spotlight? What struggles shaped the person behind the fame? What losses left scars that success could never completely erase? And why do so many fans believe that some of her brightest moments arrived alongside some of her deepest personal battles? The story of Julia Roberts is not simply a story about stardom. It is a story about resilience. It is a story about family, heartbreak, ambition, and sacrifice. It is the story of a woman who achieved nearly everything Hollywood could offer while navigating pressures that few people could truly understand. We will explore the emotional realities behind her extraordinary career. We will follow her journey from a difficult childhood to international superstardom, examine the challenges of love and family under relentless public scrutiny, and discover why the later chapters of her life have carried a different kind of emotional weight. But to understand where Julia Roberts is today, we must begin at the very beginning. Long before she became a global icon, Julia Fiona Roberts was simply a young girl growing up in Georgia. She was born on October 28, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia, to parents Walter Grady Roberts and Betty Lou Bredemus. Her parents shared a love of the arts and operated a children's acting and writing school. Creativity surrounded Julia from an early age, but stability did not. When Julia was still young, her parents' marriage ended in divorce. Like many children whose families break apart, she suddenly found herself navigating a world that felt uncertain. The separation created financial difficulties, and life became considerably more challenging. Money was often tight. The glamorous future that people associate with Julia Roberts today was nowhere in sight. Instead, there were ordinary struggles, family tensions, and the difficult realities that many American families face after divorce. Despite these hardships, Julia remained deeply connected to her siblings, particularly her older brother, actor Eric Roberts, and her sister Lisa Roberts Gillen. Watching Eric pursue acting planted an idea in her mind. Maybe she could do it too. Maybe there was a place for her in that world. Yet dreams and reality are often very different things. Another painful chapter arrived when Julia was still young. Her father died from cancer in 1977 when she was only 9 years old. The loss left a lasting impact. Children rarely have the words to explain what such a loss means, but the absence of a parent can shape a life for decades. Even as Julia grew older and her career soared, that early heartbreak remained part of her story. At the time, however, the future remained uncertain. She attended school, dreamed about life beyond Georgia, and slowly developed aspirations that stretched far beyond her hometown. Eventually, those dreams led her to New York City. Like countless young performers before her, Julia arrived with hope, determination, and no guarantee of success. The city offered possibilities, but it also offered rejection. To support herself, she worked as a model and pursued acting opportunities whenever she could find them. The early years were far from glamorous. Auditions came and went. Opportunities disappeared. Competition was fierce. Hollywood often celebrates success stories, but rarely discusses the countless disappointments that come first. Julia experienced those disappointments firsthand. She was not an overnight sensation. She spent years trying to prove herself in an industry filled with talented people chasing the same dream. Gradually, small acting roles began to appear. Then came a breakthrough. In 1988, her performance in Mystic Pizza attracted attention and demonstrated that she possessed something special. Audiences connected with her authenticity. Casting directors noticed her charisma. The momentum continued. Then came the role that changed everything. In 1990, Pretty Woman transformed Julia Roberts into an international superstar. Almost overnight, she became one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. The film was a massive success, and Julia's performance captivated audiences worldwide. Suddenly, she was everywhere. Magazine covers, television interviews, red carpets, award ceremonies. The young woman who had once struggled to find opportunities was now one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars. To the outside world, it looked like a fairy tale. But fame has a cost. The larger Julia Roberts became as a celebrity, the smaller her private life became. Every appearance generated headlines. Every relationship attracted attention. Every decision became public conversation. The paparazzi followed her relentlessly. Tabloids analyzed her personal life. Millions of people felt they knew her, despite never meeting her. For someone naturally protective of her private world, that level of exposure could be exhausting. Success brought wealth and admiration, but it also brought pressure. The pressure to remain successful. The pressure to remain likable. The pressure to remain the Julia Roberts the world expected. And behind the dazzling smile that audiences loved so much, there were moments of loneliness, anxiety, and emotional strain that fame could never erase. The world saw a woman living a dream. But the next chapter of her story would reveal just how complicated that dream could become. Because as her fame reached extraordinary heights, Julia Roberts would soon face some of the most intense scrutiny of her life. Through love, heartbreak, public criticism, and personal challenges that unfolded under the gaze of the entire world. And those battles were only beginning. By the early 1990s, Julia Roberts had become more than a movie star. She was a cultural phenomenon. Every film she released attracted enormous attention. Every public appearance became headline news. Every aspect of her personal life seemed to generate endless discussion. For many people, fame represents success. But for Julia Roberts, fame also brought a level of scrutiny that few celebrities have ever experienced. The woman who once dreamed of simply becoming an actress now found herself living under a microscope. And nowhere was that pressure more visible than in her personal relationships. As her star continued to rise, the public became fascinated with her romantic life. Relationships that would have been private for most people became front-page stories. Speculation often spread faster than facts. Rumors frequently overshadowed reality. In 1991, Julia married country singer Lyle Lovett after a whirlwind romance. The marriage surprised many observers and generated enormous media attention. Yet the relationship lasted less than 2 years before the couple separated. Years later, both spoke respectfully about one another, but the intense public attention surrounding the marriage demonstrated how difficult it had become for Julia to maintain privacy. Even personal decisions had become public entertainment. Every breakup inspired headlines. Every appearance generated theories. Every silence invited speculation. The emotional burden of that kind of attention is difficult to measure. Most people experience heartbreak privately. Julia Roberts experienced it before millions of spectators. Throughout the 1990s, the tabloids seemed determined to turn her personal life into a never-ending narrative. Stories appeared constantly. Some were true. Many were exaggerated. Others were pure speculation. The result was a version of Julia Roberts that often existed separately from the real person. While audiences adored her on screen, the media frequently portrayed her through a different lens, one filled with controversy, gossip, and endless judgment. The pressure was relentless. At the same time, her professional career continued to evolve. Following the extraordinary success of Pretty Woman, expectations became almost impossible to satisfy. Hollywood wanted every film to be another blockbuster. Studios wanted another phenomenon. Audiences expected magic every time she appeared on screen. Yet no actor can maintain perfection forever. Some projects succeeded beyond expectations. Others struggled. Like every major star, Julia experienced both triumphs and disappointments. What made her situation unique was the intensity of public reaction. When a Julia Roberts film succeeded, the praise was enormous. When a film disappointed, the criticism could be equally intense. Living under those conditions required emotional resilience. Fortunately, Julia repeatedly demonstrated an ability to reinvent herself. Movies such as Sleeping with the Enemy, My Best Friend's Wedding, Notting Hill, Erin Brockovich, Ocean's 11, and many others helped solidify her place among Hollywood's most enduring stars. Then came one of the most significant moments of her career. In 2001, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Erin Brockovich. The victory represented years of hard work and perseverance. For many actors, winning an Oscar marks the ultimate professional achievement. Yet even at the height of her success, Julia continued to face the challenges that accompanied celebrity life. Awards could not eliminate pressure. Fame could not eliminate stress. Success could not guarantee peace. Behind the scenes, she was navigating the same emotional complexities that affect countless people. Relationships, family responsibilities, career decisions, and the search for balance. That search became even more important after another major turning point in her life. In 2002, Julia married cinematographer Daniel Moder. Unlike many of her previous relationships, this chapter would prove remarkably stable. Over the years, their marriage became one of Hollywood's most enduring partnerships. Together they built a family and welcomed 3 children. For Julia, motherhood transformed her priorities. The woman who had spent years at the center of Hollywood suddenly found herself focused on something entirely different: family. In interviews over the years, she often spoke about the importance of home life and raising her children away from excessive publicity. That decision reflected a growing desire for privacy. After spending decades living in front of cameras, she increasingly valued the parts of life that could not be photographed. Yet balancing motherhood and superstardom was never simple. Every parent understands the challenge of dividing time between personal responsibilities and professional obligations. For someone as famous as Julia Roberts, those challenges existed on an extraordinary scale. Film productions required months away from home. Promotional tours demanded travel across continents. Public appearances consumed valuable time. And throughout it all, she remained one of the most recognizable women in the world. As the years passed, another reality emerged. Hollywood itself was changing. The industry has long been criticized for its treatment of aging actresses. While male stars often continue receiving leading roles well into later life, women frequently face different expectations. Julia Roberts entered an entirely new phase of her career. The conversations surrounding her work increasingly included discussions about age, appearance, and longevity. These pressures affect countless performers, even those at the very top. Although Julia has never publicly presented herself as a victim, she has spoken openly about wanting to age naturally and focus on what truly matters. That perspective reflects a broader truth. Growing older can be emotionally complex for anyone. For someone whose image has been recognized worldwide for decades, those realities can become even more visible. The demands of fame never completely disappear. The attention never fully stops. The expectations continue. And while Julia Roberts remained admired, respected, and successful, the emotional weight of decades in the spotlight continued to accumulate. By this stage of her life, she had achieved nearly everything imaginable: awards, fame, financial success, a family, professional respect. Yet another challenge was quietly emerging. It was not a scandal. It was not a dramatic public controversy. It was something far more personal. As the years moved forward, Julia began confronting the inevitable reality that every superstar eventually faces: the passage of time. The industry was changing. Her priorities were changing. Her children were growing up. The life she had spent decades building was entering an entirely different chapter. And for a woman who had spent much of her life protecting her privacy, the emotional questions became deeper than ever. What happens when the spotlight no longer feels as important as it once did? What does happiness look like after achieving everything? And why do so many observers believe that the most heartbreaking chapter of Julia Roberts' story has unfolded not during her rise to fame, but during the quieter years that followed? Those answers reveal a side of Julia Roberts that many fans have never fully seen. And they help explain why her life took a heartbreaking turn, not because of a single tragedy, but because of the emotional realities that accompany time, change, loss, and the search for meaning beyond stardom. Today, as Julia Roberts approaches her 59th birthday, she occupies a rare place in Hollywood history. She is no longer simply a movie star. She is a living icon. Few actors have maintained the level of admiration, recognition, and cultural influence that she has enjoyed for more than 3 decades. Her smile remains famous across generations. Her films continue to attract new audiences. And her name still carries a sense of warmth and familiarity that many celebrities spend a lifetime trying to achieve. Yet the most emotional chapter of Julia Roberts' story may be the one she is living right now. Not because of scandal, not because of a dramatic downfall, and not because of any hidden tragedy. Rather, because the realities of life eventually reach everyone, even those who seem to have everything. For much of her career, Julia Roberts was everywhere. Year after year, audiences could count on seeing her headline major films, dominate magazine covers, and appear at Hollywood's biggest events. But in recent years, her approach to life has changed. The woman who once lived at the center of global attention has increasingly chosen something different. Distance from the spotlight. Privacy. Family. Peace. While she continues to act selectively, Julia has become far more careful about the projects she accepts. Her public appearances are less frequent than during the height of her fame. She has repeatedly emphasized the importance of home life and the value of being present for her family. To some fans, this shift came as a surprise. After all, Hollywood had spent decades building an image of Julia Roberts as one of its brightest stars. But for Julia herself, the change appears to reflect a deeper evolution. Success had already been achieved. Awards had already been won. Records had already been broken. The question was no longer how to become famous. The question had become how to live a meaningful life beyond fame. That transition can be surprisingly emotional. Many people spend years chasing goals. Then one day they achieve them. And suddenly they discover that accomplishment alone does not answer every question. For Julia Roberts, the later years of life seem to have brought a greater focus on relationships, family, and personal fulfillment rather than relentless professional ambition. Yet even that shift carries its own challenges. One of the most significant realities she faces today is something every parent eventually experiences. Her children are growing up. For decades, family life became the center of her world. She worked carefully to shield her children from excessive publicity and provide them with a sense of normalcy despite their mother's extraordinary fame. But time moves quickly. Children become adults. Family dynamics evolve. The busy years of raising a young family gradually give way to an entirely different phase of life. For many parents, that transition is bittersweet. There is pride in watching children grow. There is joy in seeing them become independent. But there is also a quiet emotional reality that often goes unspoken. The years that seemed endless suddenly feel brief. The moments that once filled every day become memories. That feeling is universal. And even one of Hollywood's biggest stars is not immune to it. Another emotional challenge comes from the simple passage of time itself. Julia Roberts built her career in an industry obsessed with youth. For decades, audiences watched her play romantic leads, charismatic heroines, and unforgettable characters who seemed larger than life. But aging changes everyone's perspective. In interviews, Julia has spoken about embracing life as it comes rather than trying to fight every sign of growing older. That attitude has earned admiration from many fans. Yet accepting change is not always easy. Each passing year serves as a reminder that life moves forward whether we are ready or not. Friends grow older. Family members age. Priorities shift. Entire chapters close. Perhaps one of the most genuinely heartbreaking aspects of Julia Roberts' story involves the losses she has experienced along the way. The death of her father when she was a child left a permanent mark on her life. Years later, she also endured the loss of her mother, Betty Lou Bredemus, who died in 2015. No amount of fame can protect someone from grief. No award can lessen the pain of losing a parent. These experiences are deeply human, and they remind us that behind the celebrity image is a daughter, a mother, a wife, and a person who has experienced the same kinds of heartbreak that countless families face. There is another misconception many people have about Julia Roberts today. Some assume she has faded from Hollywood because she is no longer constantly visible. The reality is more nuanced. She has not disappeared. Instead, she appears to have gained something she spent much of her life seeking: control over her own story. For decades, journalists, photographers, and tabloids attempted to define her. Now she seems far more interested in defining herself. That choice may not generate daily headlines, but it represents a significant personal victory. And yet there is still something undeniably emotional about watching a beloved star move into a quieter chapter of life. Audiences often struggle to accept that their favorite celebrities are aging alongside them. The stars who once seemed frozen in time gradually become older. Entire generations pass. The world changes. And eventually people begin reflecting not only on careers, but on legacies. Why does the title say that Julia Roberts' life took a heartbreaking turn? The answer is not a hidden scandal. It is not a secret illness. And it is not some dramatic tragedy. The heartbreaking turn is far more relatable than that. It is the realization that even extraordinary success cannot stop time. It is the emotional transition from global superstar to private individual. It is the experience of losing loved ones, watching children grow up, and discovering that life's most meaningful moments often happen far away from cameras and red carpets. It is understanding that happiness sometimes requires walking away from the very spotlight that once fulfilled your dreams. For Julia Roberts, the later chapters of life appear to be less about fame and more about what remains after fame. Family, love, memories, gratitude. And perhaps that is what makes her story so powerful. The young woman from Georgia who dreamed of becoming an actress achieved more than almost anyone could have imagined. Yet her journey reminds us that success does not eliminate sorrow. Fame does not erase loss. And even the brightest smiles can carry stories that the world never fully sees.